Good evening, everybody, wherever you are at. This is Sports Crunch with D. Crom. I am your host, David Cromwell, and in just 48 hours, the Jacksonville Jaguars will go on the clock with the first overall pick of the 2022 NFL Draft. And this first round promises to be one of the most unpredictable in years, and I say that without hyperbole. There is very little consensus around the NFL this year as to who the best player is at each position. And therefore, teams picking in the top 10 themselves believe we are in for a surprise or two on draft night and perhaps a lot more the further we get down the board. And joining me for this special pre-draft live stream is my right-hand man, Hal Bent. What's going on, Hal? You can catch his work at Full Press Coverage.
Hey, David, how are you? Great to be here with you again and talking NFL draft. I'm looking forward to a crazy rest of this week and through the weekend here. It's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun indeed. And just a public service announcement that Hal and I will be hosting a live stream on nights 1 and 2 of the draft on Thursday night starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Central. No, correction. Thursday, it's 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central, 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And on Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. Central Time, and 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time. So we're going live nights 1 and 2 of the draft to break down every single pick as it is made, discuss what it means for your favorite NFL team, and we'll be joined by the coach himself, Andrew Weedman, on Thursday night, and many other guests on both nights. And we're going to have a lot of fun bringing you a different angle of NFL draft coverage. So if you want a unique view on what your team just did, join us on Thursday and Friday night. It's going to be fun. And not only that, we meet to celebrate a new NFL season and the dreams of hundreds of young men coming true at a very, very, very tough time for a lot of our friends around the world. And of course, I'm talking about our brave brothers and sisters in Ukraine. And I have set up a fundraiser. We have just raised nearly $400 for Ukrainian orphan children. And we are going to encourage all who decide to view our draft night broadcast live stream to pitch it whatever they can. Once again, no contributions too small. Even $5 will do. And if you can't donate and just want to spread the word, that is equally as gracious. So we'd appreciate that as well. So our goal is to raise a lot more than $500 by the end of business on Friday. So please keep that in mind. We will be posting the link to the fundraiser on your screen in just a moment. Hang on. Let me just get situated here, Hal. Sorry.
No problem.
This is what happens when we go live, but going live is a different animal compared to our. Yep. Yep, there it is. So you can click the link to make a donation anytime from tonight all the way until the end of Friday. And it's open all week. And once again, just $5 will do. And even if you cannot donate money and just spread the word to others and tell them to donate, that it will be equally as appreciated. So, all right, without further ado, back to football here while keeping our brave friends in Ukraine in our thoughts and prayers. Let's talk about the Jaguars at 1. And Hal, I'm sure when you were in elementary school or middle school, you learned about the parts of speech through those Schoolhouse Rock songs like
Yes.
what's your function? Cooking
Yes.
up words and phrases. And well, if you had to rewrite those lyrics to describe the Jaguars, it would be dysfunction junction. What's that function? We can't agree on who to select first. And as it was reported yesterday, the dysfunction is rooted in owner Shad Khan and GM Trent Baalke. GM Trent Baalke prefers Trayvon Walker with the number 1 overall pick, while Shad Khan prefers Aiden Hutchinson at the number 1 overall pick. And he added yesterday that a key factor in whatever that final decision ends up being might be Doug Peterson. And if Doug Peterson wants, say, Akeem Ekwonu at 1, should both Trent Baalke and Shad Khan check their egos at the door and say, okay, you're the coach. We're going to select the guy you want?
Definitely. I mean, what'd they hire him for otherwise? He's the one who's coaching him out there on the field. No doubt about that. I mean, when you start hearing about owners and general managers and coaches, nobody being on the right page, that dysfunction junction is a strong case to be made there. And, there's been a lot of dysfunction in Jacksonville, and cleaning up the Urban Meyer mess didn't seem to be cleaning that up, because that's the last thing you want to hear with a team in a premium position in the draft, to be sitting there without a clear plan, without an organizational philosophy, with the owner, general manager, and coach all on the same page. It's just sad to see there. So, I mean, Doug Peterson, if you're expecting him to coach the players, you got to give him his input. You don't have an agreement in the front office ownership group, then let the coach break the tie. Come on, guys.
Yes, and if he believes that Akeem Ekwonu is better equipped than all the offensive tackles on the roster to keep Trevor Lawrence upright, honor his wish, please, for Trevor Lawrence's sake. Honor his wish, Trent Baalke. Honor his wish, Shad Khan. Do right by Peterson. If Peterson wants to protect Trevor Lawrence above all others, honor that wish, please. If not, the hashtag Save Trevor Lawrence campaign is going to be in full force on Thursday night.
No doubt about it. And let's face it, Icky is probably the most sure thing, I would think, in this draft. If there's one player that's got all pro written all over him, can't miss prospect. I mean, you just watch him with NC State, and I mean, he's just a man among boys. He's big. He's got long arms. He's got big hands. He can move. He can run. He's throwing people 10 yards downfield. I mean, he's just a monster out there. And if I've got Trevor Lawrence, that's who I want in front of me. I'll tell you that right now. And so, it's a position of need without a doubt. They've got to protect their investment from last year. You've got the most surefire, can't miss guy there at left tackle. Plug him in. You're all set. You're protecting your franchise. It's a no-brainer.
Yes, and speaking of Akeem Ekwonu, here's some interesting biographical information. His full first name is Ikemefuna, which means in the Igbo language in Nigeria, my strength will not be in vain. So a perfectly named prospect in Akeem Ekwonu. And that's a very interesting point that you think Ekwonu is the most sure thing in the draft. Everybody else thinks it's Aiden Hutchinson.
I love Hutchinson. I think he's I think he's a sure thing in that, is he going to go in and put up Josh Allen, the defensive end numbers? Is he going to, be at that very good defensive end? Sure. He's going to play well against the runs. He's going to get his hustle sacks, but he doesn't have that explosion that he's not a Watt. He's not a Bosa. He doesn't have that jump off the page athleticism to become a superstar in the NFL. And so he's a safe pick in that you're getting a very good player. But if you want a great player, to me, the sure thing is Ekwonu.
That's an interesting point, although Aiden Hutchinson recorded a 6.75 3-cone time. That is Von Miller type for that all-important drill that is predictive of just how successful edge rushers tend to be in the National Football League. So I think Hutchinson can, but I want to, just to play devil's advocate, and I don't mean to endorse Trent Baalke one bit. He is a bottom 3 GM in this entire league. Trent Baalke, what's probably scaring him away from Aiden Hutchinson, length. Aiden Hutchinson has T-Rex arms, sub 33 inches, And Trayvon Walker, on the other hand, has pterodactyl arms at 35.5 inches. And he likes length for his pass rushers. And he bet on traits with Aldon Smith. And that's what has many in NFL circles believing that he prefers Trayvon Walker.
Yeah, and I mean the problem with Trayvon Walker, I mean, he's checks every box except for production on the field. And I've heard all the excuses so far. Well, it was a loaded defense there in Georgia. Everybody else, was getting the sacks and making the plays. And, oh, they had him as a 3-4 interior off. He should be out on the edge in a 4-3. He's going to be a different player. There's a ton of excuses about him. But the fact is that when you go to the tape, um, you know, I look at Walker and say, yeah, he looks like a player. He looks like somebody who should be making more plays. And he certainly looks like somebody who should have 10 or more sacks in a season, let alone less than 10 sacks in 3 college seasons. So for me, Walker, that would be troubling for me. And that would push him down the board is that, you have these players who test well, check every box except for the tape, and you're going into the combine, you're going into these pro days with your players stacked up, and you're verifying medicals and verifying that what you saw on the tape is justified. And he played at a high level of competition. The numbers don't lie. With the outstanding, the wingspan, the arm length, the 40-yard dash times,
The
all of
three
that.
cone too,
3-cone,
6 cone
short shuttle. I mean, it's running back numbers and wide receiver numbers there. But at the same time, you got to look at him and say, well, the production on the field wasn't there as well far too often. And that really scares me if I'm picking in the first 5 is that, freaky athletic tape, power, but doesn't have a plan rushing the quarterback, you know, d- doesn't have that production and making those big plays. You've got to have an impact player in that top 5 of the draft there. And that's really what scares me with Walker.
I am a big believer in Trayvon Walker, actually, because as the saying goes, when it comes to edge pass rushers, bet on traits. He has those traits in spades. And not only that, he is as polished a run defender as there is. He has a high floor, too. At the very least, you're going to be getting a very special elite run defender. As my friend Nick Kendall said, his run defense is teach tape. And you could expect him to contribute like that right off the bat. And I think based on the fact that he wasn't given a lot of opportunities to pin his ears back in that Georgia defense, I'm a believer that he can buck the trend of players that didn't fill the stat sheet in college to eventually fill the stat sheet in the NFL, a la Daniil Hunter of LSU, who he compares very favorably to. But spending the number 1 overall pick on him is too rich for me. I definitely agree. I'm a big believer in Trayvon Walker, and I believe that whoever gets him is getting a potential stud. But the Jaguars, you just have to try to hit a simple single here with that 1 overall pick. Don't try to swing for the fences here. Go for at least a higher degree of certainty.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And look, I'm going to be the first one that's going to say, once you're past that first pick of the draft, go crazy and start grabbing anybody from that Georgia defense because that defense is loaded. And you're going to see a ton of Georgia players from that defense being drafted in the first, the second, the third round. I mean, that defense was so deep and so strong. But, when you're, like you said, I mean, you can't screw this up, Jacksonville. That's the number one thing is you've got to get the right pick. You've got to get a foundational piece to pair with your foundation piece from last year and keep him upright and healthy. And so looking beyond the offensive line, I mean, like I said, for me, Ikwanu is the surefire best bet right there. you could probably argue and say, hey, Evan Neal might be, more consistent, or, and you want to argue offensive lineman, hey, you and I love doing that. We can do that all day here. Get down in the trenches and talk about that. And I'll see your point on that. And I understand, you know, traits, everything that you're looking for. But if I'm Jacksonville, I'm thinking about Trevor Lawrence and make the right move with that first pick. Get somebody that's going to enhance his game. And without a wide receiver that should be in that first 5 picks, I think you've got to look at that offensive line position. So, like I said, even if you're not sold on Icky like I am, no problem. Go Evan Neal. There's another pretty safe pick right there on the offensive line, and plug him in at tackle.
Yes, and when Doug Peterson was in Philly, they drafted an offensive lineman with similar traits as Evan Neal in the 7th round in Jordan Mailata. And Jordan Mailata has grown into a dependable starting left tackle for the Eagles, and Evan Neal is like 10 times more polished than Mailata was coming. Mailata was coming from Australia. He was playing rugby, and he barely played football. And look how much he's grown in such short time, in just 4 years. You get a polished version of that in Evan Neal, that would be a no-brainer too. I totally agree there, Hal. And there is a talented pass rusher who is going to be a wild card on Thursday night. We could see him fall pretty far. Based on reporting from Mike Garafolo of NFL Network, Benjamin Albright from 850 KOA in Denver, and Todd McShay, do not expect the Jets, despite some rumors to the contrary, to take Kayvon Thibodeaux at 4. They might have their eyes on another pass rusher there, and we'll get to that in a minute. But Kayvon Thibodeaux, his ceiling is the Falcons at 8. And the only question is that his floor? Todd McShay suggests it might be, because some people were telling him that the Falcons are willing to take Kayvon Thibodeaux at 8 if he is there. And if Kayvon Thibodeaux is there at 8, should the Falcons not hesitate and rush that car to the podium with his name on it?
I mean, it's such an interesting question. I mean, I know a couple months ago we were talking Thibodeaux, Hutchinson, who's going to be, the number 1 pick. And, on one hand, there seems to be, everybody's turning over every rock here to find out anything wrong that they can find with Thibodeaux. And I mean, as far as on the field, yeah, he could have a little bit more size. He could be stronger below the belt, bigger legs, add some bulk to himself. Misses some, a little out of control in the pass rush, missed some sacks that way. Quarterback able to break away from his grasp. Yeah, you can coach that out of the player. I'm not really worried. Put him in the weight room, get the coach on him. It's the other stuff of the, is he coachable? Is he in love with football, as they say? And a lot of times that's just baloney.
They were saying the same thing about Justin Fields last year. They were saying the same thing about Justin Herbert. They were saying the same thing about his Oregon teammate Penei Sewell. Track record is bad. No brainer, Falcons. If he's there, you need pass rush help. I don't care how weak your wide receiver room is. Your own roster is terrible. You might even have a worse roster than the Texans right now, and I'm not joking. Just take the best possible player at the most valuable position outside a quarterback. That is edge pass rusher. If Kayvon Thibodeaux is still there waiting for you at 8, take him. What do you say, Hal?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, I don't think he should get past number 4. It seems like, if I'm the Jets and you have somebody with a ceiling as high as Thibodeaux, and you've got, Robert Saleh, who's brought in there as a, defensive guru who had worked with all those wonderful pass rushers in San Francisco and built that team, played a big role into getting that team into a Super Bowl contender with that defense and that pass rush. I mean, again, it's right down the plate for you if Thibodeau's at 4. I don't understand how they'll pass up on him there. But yeah, if he drops down to 8, I mean, Atlanta should be have a smile from one end of their face to the other in the entire city, because the potential to be that, you know, Joey or Nick Bosa, to be a TJ Watt and put up 10, 12, 14 sacks a year. I mean, he has that potential. He may not get there. He's got work to do. There's no doubt about it. But as the highest, to have that ceiling in 2 or 3 years, we could all be sitting here and saying, why didn't this guy go number 1 again? I don't understand it. He's putting up 15 sacks a year. He's dominating. Yeah, he could be that guy. He's got that potential. And, you just have to go back and look at some of the other drafts and you say, how did Aaron Donald make it to 13 overall? Same type of situation. You see these guys, don't overthink it. Get these great players who are there, who have that potential. Believe in your coaching staff is what these teams need to do.
Yep, believe in your scouts, believe in your coaches, believe in everything. Because if you do not trust your scouts or your coaches, you are not going to do a very good job in this draft or in any draft. And back to the Jets. If there is a pass rusher, they are considering it 4. And if Akeem Ekwonu is there at 4, I think he should be the pick based on how high Joe Douglas is reportedly on him, and plus Mekhi Becton. There's been buzz since late last year that Mekhi Becton had lost a lot of trust in that Jets building. And Joe Douglas, knowing how big he is in investing in that offensive line, if he thinks that it's a real possibility that one of his picks is a whiff on that offensive line, he will not hesitate to right that wrong. And he sees Ekwonu as that 10-year starter that he thought Mekhi Becton was going to be for them. And if he's there at 4, along with Sauce Gardner, I think those two should be the pick. But another name has entered the frame for the Jets at 4, based on reporting from Jordan Renan of ESPN, who covers the Giants, and Connor Hughes, who covers the Jets for The Athletic. Florida State defensive end Jermaine Johnson is the edge they have their eyes on it for. I think Jermaine Johnson's a very, very good player, but passing on Kayvon Thibodeau for him just doesn't seem right to me. But if there is something to make sense out of this, it is this. Tony Pauline reported last night that Woody Johnson, Jets owner Woody Johnson, is heavily involved in this draft. And before people will try to burn their houses down, trying to say this is a false report, he says the source that told him this was the same source that told him weeks in advance that Trey Lance was the pick for the 49ers at 3 and not Mac Jones. And there you have it. It's a very trustworthy source that gave him that information. So with Woody Johnson being heavily involved in this draft, do you fear that Joe Douglas's hard work is going to be all for naught?
Yeah, Woody Johnson has proven himself in the past to be one of the most hands-on, influential owners that demands results, inserts himself in the free agency process, into the draft process, into the contract negotiation process. He's very, very hands-on. I think there was a big sigh of relief around the Jets front office when Johnson was ambassador to somewhere and was out of the UK and out of the country for 4 years. Certainly took a heavy weight off of their shoulders. But yeah, I mean, he's involved. He wants to win. He wants to be involved in that process. That's part of the allure of, hey, I spent X billion dollars for this team. I'm going to do whatever I want. And, the NFL owners that fall into that, having been successful businessmen to get where they are, the NFL is its own kind of business, which makes it kind of interesting. But I mean, on one hand, Jermaine Johnson, interesting lump of clay for the Jets to shape there as well if they do end up with him. But yeah, I would so much rather see Thibodeau, and I certainly believe Woody Johnson would be very hands-on and involved in this. And if he falls in love with Jermaine Johnson, he owns the team. He's the boss. We all know you got to do what the boss wants.
Yes, indeed you do. And this is where the vast majority of NFL owners go wrong. They often will demand a player that their GM and coaching staff do not like, yet their wishes have to be adhered to. But I will also say this. I do think Jermaine Johnson is a good player, but if the choice is between Ike Ekwonu, if he's available at 4, Sauce Gardner, and Jermaine Johnson, I would go with either Icky or Sauce. Either one of those two would make sense for the Jets at 4. Wouldn't you think so?
Definitely. Either one of them. Jermaine Johnson might still be on the board at number 10 when they're
At
picking
10. Take him
again.
at 10. Take him at 10.
You take him at 10, nobody's got any problem with that pick. It's
Jermaine that's where he belongs.
right.
And I like Jermaine Johnson a lot. He has upside similar to Max Crosby of the Las Vegas Raiders. And if you get a player even half like that, you get a home run.
Exactly. Johnson's great. He's long. He's athletic. He put up the stats at Florida State after transferring from Georgia. He's one of those guys. Everybody likes him. They talk about him as having the right attitude. He's the first guy in the locker room, the last guy out. Everybody likes him. High character, oozing with athleticism, has upside. Of course, he sounds great, but take him at 10, not at 4.
You said it. And if we are looking for a potential surprise in the top 10, the buzz on this possibility has been getting louder and louder and louder and louder these past couple of days. The Houston Texans at 3 are a big mystery because just like he did with Belichick New England, Nick Caserio has put like soundproof boards all over that Texans draft room. Nobody, and I mean nobody, inside that room is allowed to leak any semblance of truth to the public. Nick Caserio has everybody in that building tight-lipped about what the Texans are going to do at 3, but there is a belief around the league that the 3rd overall pick is going to be a corner. And it's not Sauce Gardner. It's Derek Stingley of LSU. When Derek Stingley was a freshman at LSU, he looked like potentially a number 1 overall pick. And I'm not kidding. He was that good his freshman year. But the past couple seasons with injuries and COVID, he just didn't look anywhere near that level. But the Texans might have a belief that if it weren't for those injuries, Stingley would have been playing very close to that 2019 level of player he is. And a common player comparison for Derek Stingley Jr., somebody Nick Caserio knows well from his time in New England, Stephon Gilmore. And if he sees a defensive player of the year type player in Stingley that he saw it with Stephon Gilmore when he was in New England, I kind of understand this.
Yeah, I mean, he really hasn't played a lot since 2019, so you don't have a ton of tape. And what's there, the Liz Frank injury, we don't know how long that was bothering him, after missing after playing in those first 3 games last year. He didn't look like himself. He may have had that injury previously already. So you can almost kind of wipe last year off the board. You talked about the COVID he had problems with as well. And I mean, it's been a tough couple of years, but when you look at that 2019 tape, like you said, I mean, you're thinking, this is my Jalen Ramsey. I'm going to throw him out there and I've got my number 1 all-pro cornerback for the next 10 years. I'm all set, I mean, the strength, the knowledge, the footwork, the speed that he showed on tape. I mean, everything looked good. He had a great pro day, ran a 4.440, under 7 on the 3-cone drill. So you're looking at saying, hey, that foot looks like it's back. It's not like you're going to be drafting him and he's going to sit out the first 2 months or anything like that. So again, he's got that, great man coverage skills. If you're I mean, if you're, playing, cover two all the time, maybe it's not worth the pick, getting somebody like that. But if you're looking at I need somebody who can man up, played on the left side, played on the right side. I understand the hype about Derek Stingley Jr. I certainly do. You just watch that 2019 tape. It's a heck of a roll of a dice if you've got Sauce Gardner, who's so much more of a sure thing, sitting there, and Stingley already there. If you've got them both, to pick Stingley over Gardner, that's a tough choice to make. But boy, it's spicy, bold barbecue down there in Houston. That might just be. I can see it. I can see it. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be too shocked, and I wouldn't throw him in the fire over it.
And if the Texans do indeed go with Stingley at 3, either Nick Caserio has a deep conviction about him, or Jack Easterby isn't letting him do his job.
Right, exactly. And that's the scary part with the picks coming out of Houston is Jack Easterby's there, and you don't know what's going through his mind there. And if he's overruling Caserio, that could get really ugly really soon again in Houston. Ugh.
Absolutely. Plus, the Texans have a pretty promising young quarterback on their roster in Davis Mills. I would highly consider either Aquanu or Evan Neal with that 3rd overall pick if I were at least in Nick Caserio's shoes, wouldn't you? To give that quarterback the best possible chance?
I mean, Davis Mills looked great last year, and there was no pass protection up front. He was under fire constantly the entire season. So it's kind of like, boy, I'd really like to see what he does with a little bit of help up front. If he isn't fearing for his life every second he's back in the pocket. Definitely. You've got, Ekwonu Neal, you should have one of those two sitting there for you, hopefully. Seems like a slam dunk to me. Again, if you've got that quarterback, you've got to protect him. You've got to put him in a position to succeed. And, I think that's why we're going to see these, especially in these first, say, top 10, what, three offensive tackles at least, I would expect.
Yes, and there might be a 4th because there could be some bidding to move up for Trevor Penning because after him, there's a bit of a drop-off, and after Bernard Ryman, there's a huge drop-off. This tackle class isn't deep whatsoever. It's like 3 day one starters, 1 almost day one starter, 1 project that might need a half year to a year, and then all year long to multiple year project guys. That's what we're looking at with this tackle class, which should be no surprise if we see 4 tackles go in the top 10 to 15 picks. And speaking of quarterbacks, one of the biggest mysteries of this first round is where do the quarterbacks go? We can't expect 3 quarterbacks to go. Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, and one of Matt Corral or Desmond Ridder. But the big mystery, as I discussed on my special podcast with Carmen Vitale of the Draft Network last week, is where do they go? She was buying into the Lions, drafting Malik Willis at 2. But with all the tea leaves suggesting that the Jaguars will pass on Aiden Hutchinson for either an Akeem Aquanu or a Trayvon Walker, I do not see them passing on Aiden Hutchinson at 2. The first major candidate to draft a quarterback is the Carolina Panthers at 6. That said, they want to trade out of that pick because they do not pick again until the 4th round because of the Sam Darnold trade and the CJ Henderson trade. However, because it's a strictly seller's market, as Albert Breer reported today in his mock draft, he doesn't see a lot of trades going down on Thursday night because with the lack of star power in this draft, he doesn't see lots of teams interested in moving up for that 6th overall pick. So let's say the Panthers are forced to keep that pick, and one of those 3 tackles, whether it be Evan Neal, Akeem Aquanu, or Charles Cross, are still on the board. You have to go with one of those tackles. You cannot reach for a quarterback that high, no matter how impressive he is, because I don't think Kenny Pickett is worth that 6th overall pick. And as much promise as Malik Willis has, I'm not sure he's worth that pick either.
Yeah, I'm not sold on any of these quarterbacks.
Nobody
I
is.
look. No, but I mean, the thought of three of them, or I've seen mock drafts with, seeing Matt Corral and Sam Howell sneaking up at the end of the first round. I'm going, wait a minute. These quarterbacks are not that good. You've got a strong class in 2023 with quarterbacks coming out next year. I mean, this is going to be the bump in the road. Malik Willis is the highest ceiling. I think anybody will agree to that. I think Kenny Pickett is ready to play and start, um, possibly, but even that, I'm looking at end of the first round, beginning of the second round at the earliest. That I mean, we know they're going to overdraft the quarterback, so we know
One
it's going
team.
to happen. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, Carolina picks a quarterback at 6, and I'm going to lose my mind. I'll tell you that much.
Oh my God. There is one Panthers fan out there that just might lose his mind as well. And I'm talking about arguably the biggest Carolina Panthers fan on the earth, country music singer-songwriter Luke Combs. He is the biggest Carolina Panthers fan ever. He tweets about them all the time. He was invited to a practice last summer. There's a picture of him and Christian McCaffrey laughing together. After passing on Justin Fields and Mac Jones, and then doing all you can to get to Deshaun Watson, settling for like a Kenny Pickett at 6 or a Malik Willis who's going to need to ride the pine for a year, most likely. That's a screwed up process. It just is, isn't it?
It really is. And I mean, I understand the teams need them, but there's quarterback help out there. You can pry away a Baker Mayfield, a Jimmy Garoppolo. Those guys are there. Get them for a bridge till next season. I mean, you can't go back to Sam Darnold, right? I mean, that's
Yeah, especially with your job on the line, Matt Rule.
yeah,
And
exactly.
if you do draft Malik Willis, you must bring in one of those two guys so Malik Willis can sit all year. But if there is a quarterback team pairing that makes the most sense, I think it is Malik Willis and the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have been rumored to be infatuated with him since the Senior Bowl. And if the Steelers have to trade up and get Malik Willis, even though he might have to ride the bench for a couple of years, do it. This is Kevin Colbert's final draft as GM. Your job, Kevin Colbert, is to ensure that the Steelers, you do not leave this draft without the quarterback you love. And if that requires moving up 8 to 10 spots for him, just do it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you're sold on Willis and you're gonna sit in at 20 and just hope that he drops down to you, I mean, you just can't do that. I mean, there's too many teams that are, sitting there that you got the opportunity to trade up over you. You've got New Orleans right in front of you. That's a wild card with the quarterback as well. They're at 19. You don't know what they're at 16 and 19. Sorry. So they've got two shots to grab them there. They've got extra ammunition. So yeah, if you're Pittsburgh, you've got to be thinking of, getting into that 13, 14, 15 range right there. If you're sold on Malik Willis and you don't think he's going to get to you, yeah, you've got to move up, be aggressive, and do what you need to do. Because again, Pittsburgh, you see what happens to these teams. A lot of them searching for that next guy. You've seen it with the Denver Broncos, David. After Peyton Manning, it took a while to get to Russell Wilson here. you know, and that was a long, painful process for you. I understand, and I mean, even the Patriots moving on from Tom Brady, there was that bridge year of before they got Mac Jones, and they're still not sure if he's the the next the quarterback of the future, but had a great first year. But the Cam Newton era is going to be quickly forgotten in New England. Trust me on that one. So it's a long process to get that quarterback. So if you're sold on somebody, what's trading up 5 spots? That's nothing,
Yeah, Steelers, if you love Malik Willis, go get him. And if there was any team I would trust to turn Malik Willis into the best possible player he could be, it would be the Steelers. It just would.
Oh, they've got the infrastructure. I mean, again, yeah. I mean, you've got the strong head coach. You've got the strong front office. You've got the ownership group aligned with that front office, aligned with that head coach. That's how teams win in the NFL. With that, to be able to pick the players, to develop the players, don't rush them, don't force feed them too much. They're the ones that have success. I mean, just look at Buffalo with Josh Allen. They had the belief in him. I certainly ridiculed him at the time when they drafted him. I said, this guy can't complete 50% of his passes. And they're,
As did
you know,
most of us.
just about everybody did that.
Yeah.
And after the first season, you were kind of like, see, what did I tell you? But they had the belief. They had the coaching staff, the strong mentor there, and they brought them along slowly, and they're reaping the benefits now. And now everybody else is saying, well, I got to find the next Josh Allen. But it's like, you have to have your house in order. You could have had him and washed him out, and, you didn't even realize it if you didn't have that structure in place.
Yes, the Bills have been a ground zero for how a successful sports organization should work these past several years based on their remarkable ability to capitalize on the ball of clay that was Josh Allen. And also, as I mentioned, the fact that this is Kevin Colbert's final draft after this weekend, he will no longer be GM of the Steelers, and the Steelers will probably announce their decision to succeed Kevin Colbert as GM. I think Kevin Colbert is thinking, if we love Malik Willis as much as I think they do, he's going to do everything he can to go get them, even if it means giving up their second round pick this year and their second round pick next year.
Yeah, I don't think there's I don't think there's any price too high to pay if you believe in that quarterback. You have to be aggressive. You have to go get him. I mean, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, coming out of college, everybody said, well, it's the offensive system he's in. We don't even know if he can play quarterback in the NFL. And Andy Reid believed in him. He moved up to get him. He sat him a year behind Alex Smith and got him pro ready. And he came out, and they've been reaping the benefits of that move ever since. And nobody talks about what it cost Kansas City to move up to get Patrick Mahomes. Nobody cares. You got your guy. You made the right choice. There's no price too high.
Yes. And speaking of trade candidates, we mentioned the Panthers as a potential trade candidate. Another team that wants to move down in the top 10 is the New York Giants, owners of picks 5 and 7, but they want to have a similar move that the Eagles just did with the Saints, allowing the Eagles to get multiple first-round picks next year, which gives them ammunition to trade up for a quarterback in case Jalen Hurts doesn't take that step forward this year. The Giants are looking for a similar piece of insurance, and they'll only get it by moving down, but it's highly unlikely they're going to get a future one if they move down because there's no quarterback worth trading up that high to get. But let's say the Eagles have their eye on somebody like a Kayvon Thibodeau, and they're scared the Falcons are going to take him at 8. Should the Giants be willing to send that pick to the Eagles if the Eagles only give them back their second in 2022? Just hypothetical.
Hypothetically, for two, I mean, yeah, I mean, you gotta have the ammunition next year. Teams are gonna want high picks, whether it's first, whether it's second. For the Giants, I mean, on one hand, you've got to look at it and you're saying, you know, they've got to get some impact. They need an impact player on both sides of the ball. You can't leave Brian Daboll, in that position with a terrible roster there. And you don't know what you've got in Daniel Jones. He's had so many injury problems. Um, you can't get a clear read on him. Just when you think he's about to turn the corner, there's some other injury, something happens. The entire offensive line goes down injured. You really don't know what you have in Jones, and you need to be in a position to strike for a quarterback. So I can see the logic of saying, yeah, I would accept the second next year to move down just because I have another second round pick to move up with. Even if I don't have multiple firsts, multiple seconds, teams will be willing to move for that. We've seen it happen in the past before. So
I
for the
got to correct
Giants,
myself, though, Hal.
yep.
I got to correct myself. I don't think Philly would make that trade to the Giants. They
Oh, I
weren't
don't
going
think
to be giving up their second to division round. That was a silly hypothetical.
New
My
Orleans.
mistake.
Let's say New Orleans, right? Yeah.
I got a New Orleans, or I got a sneakier one.
Ooh.
The Chargers desperately want to fill that right tackle spot. And let's say one of Aquanu, Neal, or Charles Cross is waiting at 7. And the Giants want to trade out of that pick badly. If you are Chargers GM Tom Telesco, this is likely the final year of Justin Herbert's rookie contract. Do you highly consider moving up to 7 to take one of those 3 tackles?
I think for the Chargers, they have to think about that because, I mean, remember, before this NFL offseason, we were saying Chargers, Chiefs, everyone else out there in the West. Now the AFC West is stacked. I mean, you could be looking at, hey, we've got Justin Herbert and we're a last place team, like because we can't protect him. It's scary the strength of that division right now. So yeah, you've got to be aggressive. You've got to take advantage, like you said, of that rookie contract, and this is the time to strike. So yeah, if you can get a Charles Cross or an Evan Neal there at number 7, oh my God, yeah, you've got to be thinking of what is it going to take me to move up those 10 spots and grab them.
And if that happened, the Chargers would have Charles Cross, Evan Neal, or Akeem Aquano at right tackle, opposite our man Rashawn Slater at left tackle. That could be the best tackle combo in the NFL next year.
Easily. Yeah, I mean, it's strong, young, under contract for the next 4 or 5 years. I mean, that seems like, talk about a building block for success right there. I mean, that's beautiful to think about.
Oh, it absolutely is. But another player I could see the Chargers trading up, albeit more into the early teens for, they want to add a speed element to their receiver group. So if a Jameson Williams or a Chris Olave is waiting at 14, and the Ravens want to move back, and the Ravens are one of the teams that are more historically inclined to trade back, even if it's just a couple of spots, I could easily see them making that move too.
Oh yeah, I definitely could. I mean, to get a deep threat, Jameson Williams, being
Chris
healthy, and
Olave too.
Chris Olave, I mean, sneaky fast Chris Olave. I mean,
Yeah.
he got kind of, going into before this, 3 months ago, he was kind of like the forgotten guy there because, I mean, you just had you had the wide receiver 1, Garrett Wilson, there ahead of him, and he got all the attention. And then you started looking and you said, whew, I'm looking at, I'm looking at the tape and I'm seeing Garrett Wilson, but boy, Chris Olave, so smooth, so sneaky fast. And then once he ran at the combine, I mean, that was it. He posted the 4.40 and 4.39 or whatever it was. And, that was just the final, that was it, flying up the draft board since. I mean, you just love to watch him catching the ball, running with the ball. He's got decent size. He's got the great speed, and he's so polished, doesn't drop any passes, can get deep. He can, play the possession game. Just you just fall in love with him on the tape is what happens with Olave. So I can certainly understand that if the Chargers are thinking about that and adding that key piece to their offense, no doubt about it.
Yes, and here's why I think they're probably going to have to make a move up for one of those 2 playmakers. If Garrett Wilson is gone by 11, the Commanders seem dead set on selecting a wide receiver. And if Garrett Wilson isn't there, I will easily assume that Chris Olave would be the pick because Ron Rivera, he rarely attends pro days. And I mean rarely attends pro days. But he was at the Ohio State pro day and his eyes were glued on Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave the entire time. So based on Rivera being there, that gives me a strong feeling that Olave is going to be the pick there, especially if Garrett Wilson is gone.
Yeah.
And as Todd McShay also reported yesterday, the Eagles are in love with Jamison Williams, and he could be the pick at 15. And he sees the Saints at 16 as his rock solid floor. So if one of those two speed threats is falling, Chargers, I'm looking for you to move up.
Yeah, and don't discount the Jets at number 10. I mean, they made
Chris
us.
Mortensen raised
Yeah.
that possibility several weeks ago because they were all in on acquiring Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek
Yep.
Hill wanted to go to the Dolphins the entire time because his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, who he sees as a father figure to him, he lives there. He wanted to be in Miami all along. But if they want that speed threat to capitalize on Zach Wilson's cannon arm, it's easily
Yep.
Jamison Williams.
Oh yeah, exactly. Or, if for some reason Garrett Wilson drops to them, best overall wide receiver in the draft, I mean, you've got to think about that. So, yeah, we could see a bunch of these wide receivers start flying off the board there between 10 and 20.
Or sooner.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows the Jets love receivers. The Texans reportedly love Garrett Wilson. They love Garrett Wilson and see him as that bona fide go-to guy for Davis Mills. And although the Atlanta it could start with the Falcons at 8, because if for some reason they don't like Kayvon Thibodeau either, if Thibodeau goes a pick or two before, because keep in mind, this draft is we always say the draft is a mystery. This year, it is a mystery.
Yeah.
It's going to be totally unpredictable. We're going to get surprised. And the Falcons, they're enamored with Drake London. So if Kayvon Thibodeau isn't that pick at 8, I could easily see it being a Drake London starting that receiver run early. And then the Seahawks, if they have their eyes set on Jordan Davis, like Todd McShay reported, they could afford to trade down a couple spots and trade down to 13, and the Texans could sneak up and get Garrett Wilson, and the Jets take James Williams. We can see a 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, yeah, we really could. I mean, they could be flying off the board here. I mean, there's so much high-end talent at wide receiver. I mean, that's what makes, it's such a premium position. We've seen this offseason with the prices that are being paid for the number one receivers, the packages that are going back in the trades. It's become the prestige position that teams need to fill. And this class is just, great because there's so much talent at the top, and it's also on the back end so deep as well. Such a deep class there. So a lot of wide receivers off the board, I think, in the first 20 picks, and you're just going to see them keep flying off the board throughout the draft because there's, whatever you like, there's somebody out there. You want a big guy, there's big guys. You want a burner, there's a burner. You want a small slot receiver, they're out there. There's so much depth, and there's so many small school sleepers out there as well at wide receiver. I love this wide receiver class this year.
I love it too. It's super deep. You could get any type of receiver all the way until the 5th round, dare I say. And this goes to a larger thing with this class. I see this class being dumped on every single day. And I understand, yes, this is a very subpar quarterback class, but this isn't 2013. Right. 2013 was historically terrible. Like I see a lot of promising talent. The depth is just enormous at almost every single position. We're going to get a lot of good players coming out of this draft. Yeah, I know it lacks star power, but this draft class isn't terrible by any means.
No, not at all. And I mean, the star power is at the wide receiver position again. I mean, like we just talked about, we're going to see 5 guys go in the top 20, pretty much without a doubt. And then when you get to that second level, what's going to make it so fun on day 2 and day 3 is where the teams rank these guys, because I'm sure there's teams that are looking at somebody like John Mechie and saying he's a top of the second round guy. And there's other teams that have got him down and saying, well, 4th round pick there. And you see, Kentucky's Wandale Robinson flying up draft boards lately as well. I mean, just so much speed, so many different players. You've got the big receivers, if you like them, the George Pickens out of Georgia. If you need that big wide receiver, you've got the developmental guys that you got Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, 6'4", runs a 4.36 40. I mean, players aren't supposed to be like that, and you've got this lump of clay coming out of this small school. I mean, there's a guy that can be a steal on day 2 of the draft right there. There's just so many exciting wide receivers here, so many different skill sets coming from so many different offenses, and I think you're just going to see, you know, um, so many of them coming off the board to the teams, and it's going to come down to the fit of what they're looking for, and are they looking for the speed, the possession, the size, what different skills. It's going to be so much fun.
It is, and another thing that makes this draft harder to predict than most other drafts is this year there is little to no consensus around the NFL at who the best player at each position is. This is the ice cream draft. It's all about what kind of flavor you like, whether it be at wide receiver, edge, or tackle, you name it. Almost all positions, maybe save safety for Kyle Hamilton. There's just no consensus around the league. And because of that, Mickey Loomis, Saints GM, told Peter King a couple weeks ago that because of that, he fully expects somebody the Saints have ranked in the top 20 on their personal board to be within striking distance for them with the 49th overall pick in the second round.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think there's going to be a lot of teams that I think we're going to see the movement is after pick 20. And that's where you're going to start seeing teams jumping up and down the boards. The first, the top 10, probably not a lot of movement. We might see some movement like we talked about with the wide receivers coming off the board between 10 and 20. But, if somebody's got Jordan Davis as hey, this is the top defensive tackle and he's perfect for my team, and I'm sitting, later at the end of the first round, why wouldn't you move up for him at that point? The later you get in the draft, the lower the price gets. And, if you've got that guy at the top of your board, if somebody's sold on the Kobe Dean at linebacker, if somebody's, sees Jahan Dotson out of Penn State as, he's not wide receiver 6. He's really he should have been taken in the top 15 or 20 picks on their board. I think we could see a lot of that jumping up. And I think one team to look at that's got that ammunition too is Kansas City, especially 29 and 30 in this draft. And they're looking for a wide receiver. Andy Reid, he's going to go get his guy. He's not afraid to make that move.
He most certainly is. But speaking of the Chiefs, look at their defensive depth chart right now. It is a mess. And I mean a mess. And as Tony Pauline reported yesterday, we should not be surprised that in the event the Chiefs cannot make a gigantic move up the board, I'm sure they'll try, but if the cost is too prohibitive for them to trade all the way up from 29 to 12 or wherever and take a Jameson Williams or a Chris Olave or a Drake London, whoever, we shouldn't be surprised if they go back-to-back defensive players at 29 and 30. A player that Brett Veach, Kansas City Chiefs GM, has loved even before this process all started back at the Senior Bowl, Boye Mafe. And if Boye Mafe is there for the taking at 29, we should easily assume he's going to be the pick for the Chiefs. But he could have other suitors in the 20s as well. And if the Chiefs think the Packers are going to take him at 22, which I could easily see the Packers doing if it's not a receiver 22, I could easily see them trading up to the Patriots at 21 to ensure they get Boye Mafe.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And there's so many players like that, depending on, the defense that you're running, the offense that you're running, where do these teams slot these guys in? The guards in the draft are so intriguing with Zion Johnson out of Boston College. You've also got Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M. I mean, you could see two guards going in the first round. Um, where do they slot in on this process as well? It's somebody that needs that offensive line help. We could see them both in the 20s as well. Um, Getting to that second round of that deep cornerback group as well. We talked about at the top of the draft, the Sauce Gardner, and we've got, um, Derek Stingley Jr., but then you factor in that Trent McDuffie is there right at the top. Um, Love Trent McDuffie there as well. Andrew Booth out of Clemson, another one. Khair Elam. I mean, you've got these guys, and where are the teams going to put them? Are they going to wait to the second round? Are they going to move up into the 20s? It's
Yes.
fascinating.
Yes. And like what I said about the hypothetical for the Chiefs moving up a few spots to take Boye Mafe, echoed what you said about the latter part of the first round is where we could really see some action in terms of trades. There's probably not going to be a ton in the first part of the first round, and there might not be a ton overall on Thursday night in general. But the further we get down the board from the late first to the early second, I think we're going to see almost as robust a trade market as we saw in early March with all the veterans and all the trade bonanza we just witnessed.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at what's going on. You've got Green Bay's got 2 first-round picks. Kansas City's got 2 first-round picks there. The Lions are sitting at the end of the first round with the Rams pick right there. You've got Jacksonville that could get back into the first round with that first pick of the second round they've got. Um, Jerry Jones, you don't think he's going to move up if somebody's dropping down that board that he's got rated highly. Buffalo is Super Bowl contender. If there's somebody that drops down to, the late teens that they're keen on, one of those cornerbacks, for example, if we see somebody dropping like that, Andrew Booth is there in the mid 20s, at 20, they may move up and try to jump up and grab that what they consider a missing piece. It's so exciting to think of,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
going to be so much fun
Yes,
Thursday
and you
night.
mentioned a lot of corners just now, and in addition to what Tony Pauline reported about the Chiefs and Boye Mafe, it wouldn't be a surprise if the Chiefs walked out of the first round with 2 defensive players, one being Boye Mafe, the other they're reportedly very high on, Kyler Gordon, Trent
Oh, yeah.
McDuffie's teammate at the University of Washington. So whether that be a Kyler Gordon or a Jackson Hill or a Lewis Seen to go along with Boye Mafe, do you think that would be a very good first round haul for the Chiefs, even if it is both defensive players, and you could address the receiver position in the second round?
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about, I mean, the depth at receiver is there. If there's somebody that they consider an impact player on the defensive side, I think they have. I mean, for Kansas City, I mean, you've got to take them because get down into that second round of the draft with these wide receivers, and I'm telling you, there are so many different players there that yeah, the Garrett Wilsons, the Chris Olaves, the Jameson Winston's, the Williams, the Drake Londons, all there. But as you start getting down, Sky Moore, I mean, speed, intriguing target, another deep threat, possibly there in the second round. The Jalen Tolbert. We talked about Christian Watson, and it just keeps going and going. I'm big on Wandale Robinson coming out of Kentucky as well. Somebody that really lit up the tape last year. Shorter receiver, but Kansas City, what are they worried about? They they did pretty well with a receiver who wasn't exactly the tallest before they traded him away to Miami. So yeah, you can wait for day 2 to get that that wide receiver that you can plug and play, because wide receiver, cornerback, those positions are that deep in this draft. You're going to find a starter. You're going to see teams picking guys in the fourth round that are going to be starters and impact players in the second half of the season.
Yes, and Tom Pelissero of NFL Network today reported some players that could surprisingly sneak into the first round. One of them was Lewis Seen, and but I'm not surprised to hear his name because he's been getting traction for weeks, if not a month or so. And he's got so many fans across the NFL. I would be shocked if Lewis Seen is not a first round pick, dare I say. So, but Logan Hall out of Houston has there's been a lot of buzz about him sneaking into the tail end of the first round. Do you think Logan Hall finds his way into the tail end of the first round?
Well, he's definitely, I can see it, because again, he's at that premium pass rushing position. And, you know, he's got the size, the length, the athleticism. I mean, sub 5 40-yard dash, great length, 6'6", has the size, that 280 pounds. You could have him as a pass rushing 3-4 end, athletic enough to go out on the edge on a 4-3. So definitely somebody that, and again, we see teams are always looking for pass rushers. There's no team that has enough of the pass rush. There's always more that's needed, and that's a premium position, and that's where I think we're going to see another position where we're going to see some guys that we may not have on the board as high, and teams are going to be a little bit desperate in grabbing those edge rushers a little bit earlier than we think.
Yeah, but here's why I think another reason why the buzz Logan Hall sneaking his way into the tail end of the first round is justified. His fellow Houston Cougar, Peyton Turner, was a similar such player last year. He skyrocketed up boards fast throughout the process, and the Saints wound up taking a chance on him with the 28th overall pick. And as Bill Carroll said on our podcast going over the defensive tackle prospects, he thinks Logan Hall is an even better prospect than Peyton Turner is. So that is another reason why I wouldn't be surprised at all if Logan Hall is a first round pick as early to the Arizona Cardinals at 23. Think of a good long-term replacement for J.J. Watt at that 4-eye position. And
Yeah,
Tony Pauline reported that as a possibility yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I said. I mean, these pass rushers, the position's such a premium. It's such a need, and once it's not as deep. There's a lot of intriguing players. There's not a lot of sure things, and that's why we're seeing the Hutchinson and Walker, Thibodeau, Jermaine Johnson there. As these guys that pretty much are going to go in the top 10, 12 picks. More than likely, because of the need for that position on each team. But the rest of those players, we're going to see these players get drafted up, even though they're not a perfect prospect. And even though there's a lot of rough edges, the ability for a team to, plug the player in as a third down pass rush specialist and impact the game as they're growing. And maybe next year in the off season and training camp, they clean up some of the things, and he can take a big step forward. But it's worth taking him an extra round early and saying, look, I can't wait 20 something picks until my next time around. I need somebody to put on the field on defense that's going to go chase down the quarterback for us, because there's a lot of quarterbacks that if you don't pressure them with a 4-man rush, game over, so you've got to have that pass rush. It's such a premium in the game today.
Yeah, the second most important position outside of quarterback in football, quarterback disruptors.
Yes, exactly.
And this is a good class to get a contributor on that front in various shapes and forms. And another player that is getting some first round buzz right now, Travis Jones, defensive tackle out of UConn.
Yeah,
I can easily see him become the first round pick as well, because there are very few interior penetrators in this class outside of Devontae Wyatt, outside of Jordan Davis. Travis Jones is the other. And if you don't like your edge crop where you're at the late first round, you need pass rush help. Travis Jones would make a lot of sense too. Oh my! And get this: what if the Chiefs got Boye Mafe and Travis Jones,
Oh,
Chris Jones? Would that
oh.
be? They could have the best pass rush in the AFC West in the next 2 years.
Hey, they got to get at those quarterbacks. There's no doubt about it. It makes more sense the more you talk about it, David. I'm telling you, you're selling me on it. Yeah, and you know, like you said, I mean, you look at the defensive tackle position, and you're looking at, all right, we get the two guys from Georgia, we've got this kid from UConn, and after that, the position kind of falls off the board at that point. There's just not the depth, and you look at it, and you say, oh, there's some DeMarvin Leals, and these guys that can clog up against the run, but like you said, that penetrator, that pass rusher in the middle, um, you know, these pocket quarterbacks, you get them off their spot, and that's when you disrupt them, and that's when nobody plays quarterback well when there's pressure right in your face and you can't step up, and that's why those interior rushers are so valuable. So yeah, definitely see Travis Jones as somebody sneaking up into that first round.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, we are running short on time here because I actually have some housekeeping to attend to that must be done before Thursday night. But to close things off, Hal, what is the main thing you'll be paying attention to on Thursday night?
On Thursday night, I think what we have to look at is once we get those edge rushers and offensive tackles off the board, how everything breaks out at cornerback and wide receiver, because things can get really crazy with those two positions. And I think that's when we're going to start seeing the trades up the board. Wide receivers or cornerbacks, either position starts flying off the board in the teens, and we're going to see a lot of trade activity there. Teams moving up, going to get their guy before he's gone. So I think there's those premium guys that those top 15 or 20 guys each team has, and I think each team has them a little bit differently. So when one of those positions starts having a run, I think we're going to see a lot of activity. And after, I wouldn't be surprised if there's no trades in the first 10 picks, 10, 12 picks. After that, things get crazy, and that's what I'm looking forward to. I want to see that crazy trading up and down, and I think it's going to be the wide receivers and cornerbacks that trigger that.
Believe it or not, the main thing I'm keeping my eye out for is quarterbacks on Thursday night. Yes, this is an underwhelming quarterback class with absolutely no short things compared to what we had the past couple years in 2021 and 2020. But as Carmen Vitale and I were talking on our podcast last week, quarterbacks are going to be a main ingredient, if not the ingredient, as to how this first round unfolds eventually. And just how far will the Steelers have to make a move up the board to get a Malik Willis or a Kenny Pickett? It might be higher than you think. So how the board falls and how far the quarterbacks fall and where teams think they need to move up to get that quarterback, that is going to be the number one thing I'm paying attention to because I think that will give us the biggest clue as to how the rest of the first round will transpire. And he is Hal Bent of fullpresscoverage.com. Follow him on Twitter at HalBent01. I am David Cromwell, the host of Sports Crunch with D-Crom. Follow me on Twitter at DCrom59 and on Instagram and now TikTok at Sports Crunch with D-Crom, where you can see videos of my recent interview with the Chicago Bears Pro Bowl offensive lineman Cody Whitehair. Cody Whitehair was picked 56 overall in 2016. He gave us a lot of thoughts on what that draft process is like, and it was a very inspiring interview. I highly encourage you to check it out. But like I said, that's it for tonight. But Hal and I, along with Coach Andrew Weedman, will be here with you on Thursday night, beginning at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 p.m. Central, 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time, to help make sense of what promises to be a wild first round on Thursday night. And without further ado, for Hal Bent, this is David Cromwell saying so long. See you Thursday night, and stay cool, and please keep our brave, inspiring friends in Ukraine your thoughts and prayers. Slava Ukraini, glory to Ukraine, and we will see you on Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central, 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time, to analyze every pick as they come in what will be one of the wildest first rounds we've seen in modern memory. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay cool. Cat's kitten.